Welcome to City Life. I'm Beverly Thompson. This coming year is going to be an exciting one for public transportation in Durham. The Go Durham Better Bus project is laying the foundation for a greatly improved rider experience, especially in communities that have been traditionally disadvantaged. Joining me to talk about what this project is and why public input will be playing such an important role in how it takes shape are Transportation Director Sean Egan and Jackie Turner with J. Turner Consulting. Welcome, and thank you both for joining me.
Thank you for having me.
So, Sean, let's get started with the project itself. What is the Go Durham Better Bus project?
So the Go Durham Better Bus project is a $1.5 million initiative to identify and design improvements to our whole bus transportation network. So we're looking at things like safe pedestrian access to bus stops, things like the comfort at bus stops, shelters, benches, making sure that there's information available at the bus stops about when that next bus is coming. And we're really also trying to pair these infrastructure improvements with service improvements on our Go Durham routes. Mm-hmm. So the Go Durham Better Bus project has 5 individual sub-projects that identify service and access improvements system-wide. And these projects are the bus access, bus speed and reliability, Durham Station area, Fayetteville Street corridor, and the Holloway Street corridor, which includes the Village Transit Center. Mm-hmm. Because of this project, we expect to see better rider experiences, more reliability, better comfort, convenience, safety, and other improvements across our Go Durham network.
Okay, that's a pretty good description. So Jackie, I know that your company is leading the city's community engagement process for this project. Why is extensive community engagement needed for a project like this?
Well, our team, and I'm part of an engagement team that's working on it. And one of the things before we were even selected for the project, we were aware of the City of Durham's commitment to equitable community engagement. And we wanted to make sure that we were engaging the community in multiple ways that were familiar and convenient to the particular users in the areas that we were where the Better Bus project was occurring. And that means something different for each person. And the convenience of 24/7 online outreach is great for some, but it's not great for all. So we understood that we needed to provide multiple methods to reach all members of the community, and particularly the transit riders. And by some of the methods that we chose, our intention was to build trust within the communities and establish long-term relationships related to transit and other efforts.
Okay, so we'll talk a little bit more about community engagement as we get through the show. But Sean, let's first talk about why the Better Bus project is even needed.
So right now we're in the process of updating the Durham County Transit Plan, and we'll be deciding through that process how to invest $1 billion over the next 20 years in transit improvements in Durham and beyond Durham across our region. So in November 2019, we began a robust community engagement process called Engage Durham. And we went out to the community to talk about their needs, what they're looking for, what they like about our transit system and our transit network, and where we can improve. And what we've heard consistently from our riders and from our community through that process is the need to make bus stops safe and accessible, to have good sidewalk connections and crosswalk connections, to make transit services more frequent and more reliable with better connections across town so that people can get to their destinations on transit quickly and reliably.
Okay, so all of that makes perfect sense. But Jackie, let's talk about the public engagement component. I know that it's going to follow the city's equitable community engagement blueprint. I know you're not with the city, but tell me what that blueprint is and how your process will mimic that.
So, well, I may be more familiar with the community engagement blueprint than a lot of people, but the Equitable Community Engagement Blueprint was born out of a approval of the master plan for the Durham Beltline Trail back in 2018, and at that time, the mayor and the council directed NIS, Neighborhood Improvement Services staff, to develop something that would ensure that all members of Durham's community, and particularly people that are impacted by a project and that lived or worked in that particular area, had a chance to participate in the planning and the decision making. And so that blueprint, which is a living document, so it's not just a final document, lays forth, just sort of the principles of being intentional about engagement with all peoples, as well as suggests several methods. And one of the things that was brought up at that point was working with community partners. And the Better Bus Project is working with NIS and 4 community partners, which are existing local organizations, in terms of spreading the word and having outreach for the Better Bus Project. And that allows us to work with groups that are already trusted within the community and their extensive networks. So that's one of many ways that we are complying, or at least following the guidance of the blueprint.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So Sean, how is this project being funded?
So this is funded through the Durham County Transit Plan, which, as a result of the sales tax revenue in referendum in 2011, there's a 0.5-cent sales tax available for transit. And I want to pick up a little bit on what you and Jackie were talking about the importance of equity in this work. Because when we look at our Go Durham riders, we know that over 80% of our riders are people of color. Nearly 75% have incomes below $25,000 a year, and 2/3 live in zero-car households. So that means that transit is their transportation. Mm-hmm. So when we talk about making investments in equity and really focusing our investments on traditionally disadvantaged communities, that's what this Better Bus Project does, because that's who our riders are.
Well said. So Jackie, feedback is always important, but how will you use that feedback that you're gathering during the community engagement process? How are you going to use it as a part of the project itself?
Well, as Sean mentioned, the 5 separate projects that each sort of have their own timeline and deliverable, we will be using that feedback and actually designing the engagement for each of the project leads, so that we are asking information or requesting information of the public that they need to guide and develop their particular recommendations. And that'll be feedback to the team, but also the feedback from the community will help the transportation department and Sean's team to prioritize and design improvements such as sidewalks, crosswalks, streets, and bus stops. Not only for the BBP project, but as they go forward into the future. And I say it's not just our feedback, and I hope that others would build on the feedback that we have, the way that we have actually built on the feedback of recent other transit projects that are occurring, such as the Durham County Transit Plan and the Engage Durham process, which has a transit component that we have referred to. In addition, there's sidewalk surveys and other projects. So we pay attention to those and we build off of those.
Okay. So, Sean, I believe you mentioned the 5 projects, and one of them is bus access. So let's talk in general about what's included in this project.
So what we're doing with bus access is developing designs for 20 quick build projects that'll include things like sidewalks, crosswalks, so that when people are arriving at the bus stop, they have a safe and accessible connection from an intersection to that bus stop. And then when they reach their destination at that stop, they can continue that journey with a sidewalk and a safe crossing at a controlled intersection. So those 20 quick build projects will enable us to do that. And we're also going to be looking across our network at all of the areas within a quarter mile of our Go Durham bus routes for things like sidewalk gaps or traffic signals or other sidewalk improvements that are needed to make sure that people have that safe access to the bus stop, and that, for example, people who use a wheelchair can get easily to and from our stops. And all of our buses are wheelchair accessible, but we've heard from many in our community that they use a mobility device. And even if the bus is wheelchair accessible, if they can't complete their journey because there's not a sidewalk or a crosswalk or curb cut, they can't use our system. So we really want to make our full system accessible. And that's what Access to Transit and the bus access piece will allow us to do.
I hear you. Okay. So Jackie, looking at this piece of the project, what will community engagement look like?
For the bus access project, which is one of the first of two that are going earlier, what we're doing is developing a short survey right now, and we're doing that in conjunction with the project lead for the bus access. And so we rely on the analysis and assessment that they are doing in the field. I know that they also are looking at the complete other surveys that are complete, that where Durham residents had a chance to talk about, mention something about their stop. May not have been exactly specific, but it gives an idea of issues that are at particular stops and helps them rise to the top. And then that information, along with that project lead, will inform the questions for the survey, which we hope to put out shortly. And it will, specifically, we're trying to make a lot of the questions open-ended and asking people to tell us about their stop, as opposed to just giving them the same sort of multiple choice answers. A lot of times that doesn't give people enough of an opportunity to really vent about maybe some of the issues that are occurring.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So let me ask you, how will these surveys be delivered, or how will they reach the actual rider?
So in several ways. So, we have a project website. And so the survey will be available on the project website, which is sort of the traditional way. We also have mailing lists and stakeholders and sharing with other groups, such as the community partners. They can provide the survey to their networks. And people can also do it through their neighborhood associations or Nextdoor and that sort of thing, again, electronically. But we are also making print copies of the survey available to any organizations that would like to have those. And we will be taking the surveys in print and on tablets to specific bus stops. So with the, within COVID restrictions at the time, we will be safe, and we will actually engage people at the bus stops while they are waiting. And they can either do that in print, or they can just provide answers to us and then we can record them, or they can maybe just quickly take a few less than 10 question survey on a tablet.
Mm-hmm. So what about for people who don't speak English very well? Oh,
we definitely have translation for everything. So, and currently we do have flyers available so that people know that they can sign up for to be notified of anything that's posted on the website and follow meetings. There is a button at the top of the website that you can click on immediately that will take you to a Spanish translation of that. And we're in the process of developing yard signs, which we hope to get out by next weekend, and place them at all the bus stops, but then also provide to some other organizations to place in their neighborhoods. And those will be printed in English on one side and Spanish on the other side.
Okay, you got it covered, huh? So Sean, okay. So Sean, let's move ahead and tell me about the bus speed and the reliability project.
So, as we've gone out to the community in the Engage Durham process and some of the other processes that Jackie talked about, we've heard over and over again from our riders that they need to be able to get to their destinations on time. and that many of our riders, for example, make a connection at Durham Station from one route to another. And if their bus is 2 minutes late to Durham Station and they miss that connection, that means they won't be able to get to work on time. Or if they're coming home at the end of the day, it means they won't be able to sit down and have dinner with their family or tuck the kids in at night. So reliability is really critical for our riders. And what we're doing with the bus speed and reliability is looking at where are those places where buses are getting held up, where buses are slowing down and are consistently experiencing delays, because we know that those delays can be really impactful for our riders. So we're looking at our whole network and identifying things that we can do with traffic signals, pavement markings, and signage that will give buses an advantage, really prioritize buses and our bus riders so that we can improve the speed so people will get to their destinations more quickly and they'll get there on time so they can make those critical connections to get to work on time and to be home at night with their families. And so we're going to be looking at this across our network, but with a particular focus on our high ridership routes where the most riders are experiencing the impact of these delays.
So Jackie, what will the community engagement component for bus speed and reliability look like?
Well, I tell you, just asking people or even asking me a few months ago about bus speed and reliability would have been just a mystery. So one of the things that we are doing, it's a little bit different than the other ones in that the project lead for that, they develop a toolbox. There are several tools, and Sean mentioned some of the things that you can have, with transit signal and stop consolidation and queue jumping. That doesn't mean a lot for a lot of people. So our outreach for that, based on meetings that we had in the last couple of weeks with the community partners and other people that are on the study committee and engagement committee, was to really come up with some real world examples and some precedent images or sketches to illustrate some of the concepts. So we will actually be adding some of that to the website so that under the website has a tab for bus speed and reliability. So that information will be there so that people can follow along in the process. But the other thing for bus speed and reliability, it may be more of an in-reach process than a traditional outreach. And by that, I mean, we will more than likely to get the usable information for the folks that'll be developing the plan and recommendations, look to the bus operators and the operations staff because they have that sort of knowledge. And this is, what they live and breathe and deal with every day. And they know the issues. And so their input is going to be the sort of targeted input that the engineers and transportation planners need. So that's what the nature of it's going to be. So you're not likely to see any specific questions on a survey about bus speed and reliability, but you certainly will be able to go and learn more at the website.
So Sean, moving along to the Durham Station Transit Area Project, what is that?
So as I said a minute ago, our routes, almost every Go Durham route connects at Durham Station. And those connections are really important for our Go Durham services, as well as regional services like our Go Triangle services that connect to Wake County and Orange County and our neighboring jurisdictions. So all of those transit services rely on being able to get to and from Durham Station quickly and reliably. So what we're doing with the station area analysis is looking at all the streets that are used by transit buses, Go Durham buses and Go Triangle buses to get to and from Durham Station, and identifying what are some of those changes that we can make to things like traffic signals and signage to give those buses an advantage, because even a small change that we make with the volume of buses going in and out of Durham Station every day, a small change can have a really big impact there.
So Jackie, is this one internal looking as well for the Durham?
Not necessarily. I think that for the Durham Station, yes, the operators will be able to provide specific information, but I think that there's an opportunity to do intercept surveys, or basically surveys that can be done on the bus, where the person providing the survey, myself or someone else, will ride the bus and have people take a survey, and we will also have tables that would be down at Durham Station, and then possibly on the routes, the stops that are very close to accessing or leaving Durham Station to record some information. Again, there will also be, each of the project leads is doing their own analysis and assessment of these areas. And so there'll be that sharing of information between the project team and the engagement team. And then we will help fill the gaps of information that they might need.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Sean, what is the Fayetteville Street Corridor project about?
So the Fayetteville Street Corridor is one of our busiest transit corridors here in Durham. It has the Route 5 service that operates every 15 minutes, all day, every day, and serves major destinations such as North Carolina Central University. And what we're doing with the transit emphasis corridors, we're looking at the area from Lakewood Avenue to Riddle Road, or the Hayti Heritage Center to Hillside High School. And we want to make a consistent, high quality experience up and down that corridor. So high quality bus stops, shelters, benches, real-time information about when the next bus is coming, so that you can look up at the stop and say the next bus will be here in 2 or 3 minutes. And then also, what can we do to improve speed and reliability? What can we do with traffic signals, signage, or other bus priority elements that will make the riders on those Route 5 buses make sure that they get to their destinations on time?
Okay. So Jackie, how will community engagement be conducted for this particular project?
Again, it will be multifaceted, and we actually have done a little bit. I went out in a couple of months ago to just take pictures of the different stops along the corridors. And when I was at the Fayetteville Street and Pilot Street intersection down near Chicken Hut, I wanted to take some pictures at a very busy bus stop on a sunny February Saturday. And you just don't take pictures without saying who you are and what you're doing. So,
right.
And it was really wonderful to get an earful from people. I found that people are very willing to be engaged. If you sort of welcome them and you are, just really understanding, sympathetic and empathetic with their particular situations and conditions. They wanted to show me every little detail about the stop. That is one way that we'll do, and we'll do that at several stops along the corridor. So again, we will be there. One of the other things that we are doing is one of our community partners is the Fayetteville Street Corridor Fellows, which is an organization, and they are doing some exciting things, and they have Third Fridays events that will, at least I know there'll be one coming up here in April, but they will be the third Fridays of the month. The one that's in April will be held centered at the Hayti Heritage Center. And it's called Live from Fayetteville Street. So I encourage people to do that. But it's an opportunity for us to be there out on the site, pass out flyers about the project, and at the request of the one of the people with the corridor fellows, we will have a large map there, and then people will be able to either do a sticky note. They can write their sticky note, stick it on, or we'd be glad to write it as they tell us their story, and just take information that way. And and depending on where it is along the corridor and depending on the event, there may be other ways of getting information, but that's one of the first that we'll be doing as part of the project.
Okay. All right. So Sean, we have our fifth and final project, the Holloway Street Corridor and Village Transit Center. Tell me a little bit about this project and what it entails.
This is the corridor where our Route 3 series travels. This is the single busiest corridor in our entire Go Durham transit network and sees the highest ridership of any corridor. And what we're looking at with the Holloway Street Corridor is to provide those same high quality customer facilities. So stops, shelters, benches, and then those sidewalk and crosswalk connections that our riders need, so that up and down that corridor from Roxborough out to US 70, that people have a very high quality experience on that Route 3 corridor, and that the frequency of the Route 3, which is running every 15 minutes, and we're looking at making that even better, is paired with high quality infrastructure up and down the corridor. And then the highest transfer point on that corridor is the Village Transit Center, formerly known as Wellens Village. And that sees 3,000 trips a day in our regular service time. So we want to make really that a focus for our riders and have a comfortable, convenient, accessible transfer experience at the Village Transit Center.
Mm-hmm. So Jackie, I would imagine that this community engagement piece will look similar to the Fayetteville Street corridor, but correct me if I'm wrong.
It actually will look a little bit different. As you all have probably seen, I've been in, although my parents are both from Durham, I've actually lived in the Triangle for the last 7 years. In that period of time, you know that the changes have been pretty radical in parts of Durham, and the Holloway Street corridor is one of those. So we will actually, approach the corridor in terms of the engagement for the corridor based on the demographics of the population. So we have like a downtown area. Then we have an area that has really, really changed and has a lot of people who've lived there for a fairly short period of time. And then we have folks that have lived there for forever, and it's their home. And so it's definitely a corridor that's experienced, some gentrification, some displacement. And then also that there's a fairly large Hispanic population at the end of the corridor. And so our outreach will be different. It'll probably be sort of have 3 different components, maybe 4, depending on who we're engaging with, so that we can get that input. And we use the demographics. We've used the NCDOT demographic snapshot tool to get details about the people on the corridor. We can sort of see some of those breaks in the demographics. And so we will measure the responses that we get against who we know is living along that corridor or using transit along that corridor, to make sure that it's representative and not just all the people who might be Saturday morning convenient at home taking the survey or whatever online. So we will again be out there like for Fayetteville, but the nature of it might be different the closer you get to downtown and the closer you get to Village Shopping Center.
I must say it is impressive, the amount of thought that you've given into the differences and the similarities between community outreach for each separate project. You are to be commended for that. But Sean, how long is this whole project supposed to take? And is it expected that all the items that you identified will be constructed during that time?
So the Better Bus Project is an 18-month effort, and we're very much in the middle of that right now and excited to be bringing these designs and concepts out to the public to make sure that we really validate that what we've heard from the community is being addressed through these improvements. So we want to continue that conversation with the community, make sure that we're on the right track, and that the project concepts and the preliminary designs reflect what the community wants to see in these improvements. And at the end of that 18-month period, we'll be looking to complete the quick build projects before the end of that 18-month period, and then transition for the larger scale projects into final engineering and construction over the next 2 to 3 years.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So Jackie, if people want to find out more about how to get involved and learn more about the Better Bus Project, how can they do that?
A couple of different ways. The traditional, you can Google Go Durham Better Bus Project, and that will take you to a link to the website online. And again, the 5 projects will be listed there. If you're only interested in one, you can click a tab on the left and go to that one. As I mentioned before, the entire site is translated in Spanish. And there's also a phone number for those who just want to call. You that's what you prefer to do, and I know a lot of people that that's what they want to do. There are some flyers, and the yard signs will have a phone number at the bottom, and you're able to reach out that way. There's also on the website a way to a comment form to leave comments, and that will take you to Brian Taylor, who is the city's project manager for this website. And he will either field those questions or he will pass the questions to the appropriate project lead if it's somewhat technical, so that people can get a response. That website also will have a calendar section that is being developed now, so that you can visit it, once a month, and you can find out what sort of events that the BBP team might be at and pick up some information there.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so we've covered a lot. Is there anything else that either of you would like to add?
I'll just go, and then Sean, you can finish up. And I will just say that the project is important to me. As my grandmother did not own a car. She lived in East Durham, and then she lived off of the Fayetteville corridor for the remainder of her life. And in the 60s, when I was a little girl, I would come and I'd ride the bus from there to downtown Durham, and then back to her house at off of Cornwallis Road on the Fayetteville Street corridor. And so I have witnessed the changes in Durham, and but I know that many of my relatives that lived along the corridor have not necessarily seen or taken advantage of, or don't take advantage of some of the things that I know that maybe my friends and I do in downtown Durham. And so when this project came along, and Sean knows, I was really committed to really wanted to work on it, so that there would be a place when I'm driving down Fayetteville Street, I would see people that looked like my grandmother, would have a bench to sit on, and would not have to stand in the rain with an umbrella. So that is why I'm here. I'm going to make sure that it turns out. I'll be looking to Sean and to Brian to make sure it's a good project. So I just wanted to say that I feel very committed to it for that reason.
Great. Personal connection is always important, and, helps it mean that much more to you. We appreciate your involvement. Sean, is there anything you'd like to add in closing?
We've talked a lot today about some of the technical details, things like traffic signal timing and doing analysis of bus delay. And we sometimes in the transportation world, we get swept up in these technical details. And I think it's really important to think about the stories that we've heard from our riders and our community. So the stories of people like Jackie's grandmother who take the bus every day, who rely on this service to be able to get to work, to be able to get to school, and to get home for quality time with their family at the end of the day. So as we work through all these technical details, it's going to be really critical, and our community partners will be essential in this effort of making sure that this continues to be about how these projects address the needs of our riders and our community, and how we make a high quality transit experience available for everyone across Durham.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Thank you both for joining me. Great information on a great project. Thanks again. But that does it for City Light. Don't forget to follow us on social media. Watch us on Durham Television Network and on YouTube. And now you can listen to our podcast on iTunes. I'm Beverly Thompson. Thank you for joining me to learn more about city life in Durham.